Hello! I am so happy to see so many folks out on a very cold, late January day. So thank you for getting out and for braving the snow. I hope you have good shoes on. It was a little more snowy on some of those sidewalks than I anticipated. So I'm Christy Maxwell. If you don't know me, I'm the Director of Creative Writing here at the University of Louisville, and I'm also a professor here. And here comes Alan, another one of our Professor Emerituses. Emeriti? Hot toddy Alan. I'm delighted to have two faculty members here for a faculty spotlight. It's very rare that we're able to do a faculty spotlight in the Axton series, so it's exciting that this is one of the years where we get to hear some work from the people who make the creative writing program just so kind of vibrant. So I'm very excited about that. The Axton series, of course, is indebted to William and Ann Axton, who have endowed our series. So we are forever grateful for that. We're so excited to get to bring people to campus throughout the year for you. You're also all invited to the BAB, room 406, tomorrow from 10 to noon for the Axton workshop with Jeffrey Skinner. The people who have been selected, congratulations again, go to Paris, who I saw, Paris Klintz here, Brody Johnson here. Who else do we have? We have Brenna Julian here. And then I'm not seeing the fourth person, I don't think, but we also have Kate Fisher. So if you want to see their work ahead of time, you can always chat with Carrie Callahan, the Assistant Director of Creative Writing, back in the corner there. She can set you up with that workshop packet if you want to take part in that and you want to do kind of skim through it before the session tomorrow. I encourage you to. It's always really great to hear how someone else talks about another person's work. I think I gain as much myself hearing that as I do hearing people talk about my own stuff. So I think you'll benefit from that too, even if you're not one of the 4 students whose work was selected. Let's see. If you are interested in other events and you're not on the creative writing listserv, please talk to me after the session and I'm happy to get you added to that listserv. I send out so much information at the end of every month about the upcoming month so you can really feel plugged into the Louisville literary scene. So if you're not already receiving those, please chat with me. And then Carrie will also be in charge of book sales after the reading. So if you want to buy a book and you want to get it signed, there's opportunity to do that. Tonight we'll hear first from V. Joshua Adams, who is an associate professor here, one of our creative writing poetry faculty members, also has a hand in our lit and theory worlds in the English department. And then we'll also hear from Jeff Skinner, one of our professor emeritus here. Introducing Joshua, I'm very excited that one of a dear friend of many of us here, Jessica Farquhar, a former student of Jeff's, someone who has only just really glowing things to say about Jeff too. So one of the reasons we're so excited for those of you who don't get to work with him to hear him tonight. Also a member with Josh and with myself in Sublimity City, a poetry collective here in town. And Jessica will come up now and introduce Joshua.
Oh my gosh. So many of my professors, and it's true, I was a student of Jeffrey's almost 30 years ago for the first time. I know, sorry. And luckily we've stayed in touch all this time, and I was fortunate actually to have been married by Jeff, Chaplain Skinner as we call him, 10 years ago. Joshua Adams, though, I've not known quite as long, but as Christy said, over the past few years have been lucky enough to be in a writing group and to have exchanged poem drafts with him and just enjoyed getting to know him as a writer, a reader, and as a friend. One of the things I love most about Joshua's work is its ability to be both tender and wry simultaneously. The humorous nature of a lot of Joshua's work is a rare thing, I think, in poetry, at least done well. And I treasure it very much, which is perhaps something I learned to appreciate from my teacher, Jeff Skinner, originally. I know we both love a good, funny poem. Other contradictions and rarities I appreciate in Joshua's poems. They can be both revealing and mysterious at the same time, observant and imaginative, hilarious as well as annoyed. I also relate to a slight obsession with time that is obviously recurrent in his collection called Past Lives. Specifically, that time is the thing that gives us life while it simultaneously kills us. Or as Dylan Thomas put it, the force that through the green fuse drives the flower. Hi, Sina.
Hello.
Do you remember me?
No.
Furthermore, the poems in Past Lives wonder about the implications of that green fuse on a midlife look back. Another thing I can relate to. Joshua's poem Tropes warns us that imagining a future as good as the past is a dangerous thing. And yet this book proves that he's not afraid to do just that, revising past selves and looking toward the future, poem by poem. All the while, I promise, evoking out loud laughs from the reader, or at least from me, and I hypothesize from you all too. Joshua Adams is the author of Past Lives, as well as the critical book Skepticism and Impersonality in Modern Poetry, Literary Experiments with Philosophical Problems. A poet, critic, translator, and scholar of comparative literature, Joshua has published work in Modern Language Quarterly, Bennington Review, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and many other venues. UofL's own Joshua Adams.
Serious affliction. I stared into the abyss long enough that the abyss started to look away. Why don't you try the surface of things? It asked in a voice whose silence carved up the ice. Drinking a cider, not totally freezing, remembering the sun had a benevolent side. Even hearing the buzz of some stunned insect wandering about like the survivor of a wreck, surveying provisions, I, too, felt warm. This might be it. No more waking nights to ask what the other prisoner will do. No more raising saviors and heroes in a city where everyone steals and no one wants to be saved. Others would not feel this way, but who were they? What could be known of them but that they were not us and could never offer anything of ours? There's something happening in Gstaad between the old Texas families that soiled the underground reservoirs. My yacht's in dry dock. They're replacing copper in the paint with strep for the barnacles to dig their own graves. Let's take yours. It's enough the cage has a room for a swing. It's enough to feel the vibrating implicitly there on the threshold of the good world between the sunken Buddha head and plastic plants, the tank perpetually forgotten and refound. It's enough to play the only game. Now you see it. Now I get what I deserve. Look at you all of these beautiful people coming out in the freezing cold snow to hear some poetry. I'm grateful to you all, to my friend Jessica, fine poet in her own right, whose book is coming soon from Finishing Line Press, based here in Kentucky. Thanks to Jeff for letting me share the marquee. This is the end of the tour for Past Lives. I've been traveling periodically around the country reading from the book, which came out in the summer of 2024. And I've been asked on occasion what the book is about. And I find that each time I read it, I am less certain about the answer to that question. But I think there's a remark from Kierkegaard that my students will have heard me say many times in class, something along the lines of life can only be comprehended backward, but it must be lived forward. That's where I am. With a sigh. Under glass, everything grew, even the corpse. Want pointed out of the oubliette into formative sun, but the way was blocked by terrible flowers with terrible roots. They did nothing but loom. There was a pen, inkless, plumed. Was it a bone brushed with hair? Was it speaking? I found as I gripped it was a bird, stunned. Onyx eyes and lips plug us into whatever you've run from. Now try pinky and thumb. To other ways, the ways lead on. It is January still, so it seems fitting to read a poem, Januaries, which came out of my time in the polar vortex living in Chicago. Some of you may see some imagery that will remind you of Chicago in the dead of winter. Januaries. You've been miscast, said the actress. Perhaps she was right. It was time to give up, move to Columbus, and start an artisanal bakery. That sounded better than coming home nights to wait for news of the sunken opportunity costs. For now, I spread hot sauce on my steak taco and think of Ohio, my Ohio, where I once took the turn of a year sleeping on the remnant of a shattered disco ball brought down at midnight by a soda jerk with a broomstick. At breakfast, she pulled up her scrubs to show me her field hockey scars. And when she bent down to kiss me goodbye, little shards of mirrored glass tumbled from her hair. She still lives there, in my Ohio, tucked into a cul-de-sac of brick mailboxes, dreaming of life by the lake under the yellowing ash trees. I take the elevator down into bristling air, hard by the walls of the old beachfront hotel. Some fool crocuses breach the strip of Japanese garden. Ice plumps them for now like mascara. There is the wind again, sweeping through acres of empty tennis court. There is the seatless bicycle no one yet steals. As I was standing outside, polluting my lungs before coming in here, perhaps anticipating that someone was going to get up to no good, a young man handed me a copy of the gospel, or rather a pamphlet. What is the gospel? And I want to dedicate this poem to that upstanding young man. Oh no? Oh no? Letter to the Corinthians. Walking alone in Chinatown, I had a true epiphany of your ass. It was something I could trick with my tongue, like a creed. That transparent skirt was the glass, those velvet curtains the dark, light pooled on your scarlet back while I was tasting your parts. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. When I was a man, I spoke like a man. I called you up, told you to come, and you came. Was that you? Did you make that noise? Normally when I'm reading, there's this moment when people are uncomfortable. They don't know how to respond to some things and whether they should laugh or not. And Jessica gave everyone permission to laugh, but now nobody's laughing,
I
Jessica.
know, thanks a lot.
You preempted me.
Delivering on my promise.
Preempted me. This poem's called Autocorrect. I am waiting to be called as a witness for the prosecution in the trial of my upbringing. The courtroom fills up. There is the piano teacher, neck ropey with veins, the housekeeper who fell in the pool, the wax pate of the smiling headmaster. There is the coach with his tightly curled beard and the coach with his clean shave and sunglasses. The priest moves somewhere in the back. I catch sight of green and gold robes, smell his aftershave. Kids are running around. Jay, with the puffy black eye I gave him when he made fun of A. There's A herself, grinning shyly out of a blonde halo, just like she did from the back of her father's Camaro. College roommates in the balcony, banging on pots and pans. There's that one girl I never called back, and a few that I shouldn't have. Are they rolling their eyes? Down in the front with their dogs sit my folks, looking concerned. How dear my upbringing is to them. And there it sits, charged and indicted, in a navy Brooks Brothers suit, freshly coiffed, staring ahead, unapologetic, while the lawyers cordially confer on points of procedure and wait for the judge to exit his chambers. Everyone's a little preoccupied, so I right the hell out of there to get some air and find my wife. She said my upbringing was not her concern, that she would wait for me at the Vietnamese place after she took in some sights. Seems it's rained recently. The city hums, shaking off moisture, purposeful and optimistic. People with briefcases walk briskly through shallowing puddles and stop at street vendors for pretzels and coffee. School children pile off the bus into the park under a soaring constable sky. Someone's busking. Coins ruffle cash in the guitar case. Everything functions as it should now, even the newspapers, where, on the front page, I see a story about reasonable people getting along. Confidence man. Twist this stippled plate of glass into the sun. The arms around your neck abate. Their grip is wind on water. I see the silhouette aground, a mastless ship peeling in wheat, tar abscess where the captain's chair should be. Usez mais n'abusez pas stamps along the pen. Prokofiev was here tonight again with his French lieutenant's woman's lips. Fortune rips what future sows, he said. The flies anesthetize themselves. Seagulls circle styrofoam. Roman prostitutes admire Mary, so I keep her pitted clean. Kitsch value. The horses sleep in luxury stalls. We roll past subdivided mansions and loud domestic cars while a man in a nightshirt whispers dope to the swaying foam of his plastic cup. Gaslights flick and buzz. On the reddish frieze, the boxer's cracked coconut face leaks. Me neat, you rocks, we skim a flotsam of bow ties, broad brims, tattoos, and chains. You start in about Wells, whose stolen fire rekindles art with news of its own death. I saw Citizen Kane propped up on pillows in a school library tragically smeared with primary colors. The opera clap made my balls retract, but now the scene's a joke on repeat. just like us, arguing about aura, ordering another round, flanked by flat ionic columns painted gold. Triumph means killing what you love. Feet free of the stool, I spin like a sulking kid in an office chair, and from a mass hunched over icons in the neon gloom, she stands erect in fire engine red. There's a beer commercial now, then one for decorating dirt with shiny trucks. She tugs it down, the mini dress, but with each tug the other side climbs up toward the carmine cataract poured down her back. Faces whirl as she discerns the shine of colliding bodies. You're on to chimes at midnight now, the purity of Falstaff's heart. I reach for the smooth ground of your delicate shoulder, early one New Year's, smoking on a frozen porch, city of millions, silent, under purple snow, your borrowed parka barely fit. But you only lift a glass and say, I shall be sent for soon. And I am going to close here with the first poem of the book, called Circles. Thanks in advance to all of you for coming. Circles. They sent me to school in the great forest, planted by the timber company, where each morning the chaplain would pray to the trees. There was a river somewhere, but I was afraid to go down to it on account of the color of the water, menacingly clear, as though all the silt and leaves and branches and rocks had no real contact with anything. Things sat or floated on. That was it. Nothing mixed. I usually couldn't find the river anyway. I was always getting lost in the woods until the wardens came galloping on their Arabians to bring me back for my punishment of competitive knitting. I never won, or even made a hat or scarf I would not be too embarrassed to wear, and so when winter came, I was not only chastened but chilled. That's when you found me, staring at the stopped clock, and showed me the way out. A ritual where we barred the door, turned up the halogen lamps, and stared at each other until we decided which swimsuits most flattered our blanched bodies, high-cut one-pieces or string bikinis. The parrot helped too, from his roosts in the common room, even if he only said things he had been trained to say. What color? Be good. Wanna go. Wanna go. Thanks, everybody.
So great to hear you read, and congratulations again on that first full-length collection. It's so great to have it in the world. I look forward to all the ones that will be in the world later. So I am going to introduce Jeffrey Skinner. Jeffrey Skinner has published 8 full collections of poetry and a number of chapbooks. His most recent collection, Sober Ghost, appeared in 2024, and his selected poems, which won the Sexton Prize, will be published this year. Is it coming out a certain month, or do we know? We don't know yet, but this year. In 2014, he was awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship in Poetry, and in 2015, he was given an American Academy of Arts and Letters Award for Literature. His books have been winners of the National Poetry Series, the Crab Orchard Prize for Poetry, and the Field Prize. Over the years, his works have appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The Nation, The Paris Review, and Bomb, among many other places. In his 2012 part memoir, part craft book, 6.5 Practices of Moderately Successful Poets, which is just such a fun book. I really encourage you to get a copy or check it out from the library sometime, or read an ebook. Skinner writes, on the hard-to-categorize life of poets, At some point, we were struck on the head with the poetry brick. We spent our youth wandering in that lovely days. Then life happened, as it does to all. We were hit by more bricks. We should have awoken then to pragmatism, but it was too late. Poetry had become our way of seeing, our mode of consciousness, our gateway between the physical and whatever lies beyond. It had become somehow our chief delight and our being. This life, the poet Gregory Orr says, like no other. As Bjork has warned us, be wary of the poet's lies, and we should be skeptical of the admonishment that we should have awoken then to pragmatism. It is said with a wink, as so much in Jeff's work is said with a wink. And it's evident throughout Skinner's poetry what a gift the lens that poetry provides is, making the world infinitely lovable or salvageable or worth being in, having been in. And I get the sense he wouldn't trade this in for much. I admire his clarity and starkness of phrase, in which he does not try to mask vulnerability, as he takes on difficult subjects, including mortality and recognition. I'm like, where am I? And recognition of the ways one has disappointed the people one loves, the ways one has failed and the ways one hasn't. His most recent Sober Ghost should be put in the swag bag for the Oscars for fans of this year's standout Sentimental Value and J. Kelly. Text that, like Sober Ghost, temper hard looks with softness and imagine pathways to forgiveness and repair. Always in Skinner's poetry, one encounters astute assessments of the self and the broader world. In the judge's citation, distinguished teacher, critic, and poet Rodney Jones says of Jeff's forthcoming selected poems, Jeffrey Skinner's The Sun at Eye Level is masterful in form and substance, and so near perfect in craft and voice that, in reading the manuscript several times, I could not find a single line that I would dream of changing. And Skinner isn't just futzing around, splashing in puddles. He's writing about real subjects, out of an empowering necessity with astonishing articulation and without sacrificing wisdom or wildness, in lines that are as quick as they are resonant. I'm delighted to celebrate the poetry of a beloved UofL professor whose retirement, incidentally, resulted in my job here. so I'm particularly indebted to him in that kind of little strange way. So please join me in welcoming Jeffrey Skinner.
Thank you all for coming. Boy, it's good to see a full house. And thank you for the introduction, Christy. That was wonderful. And it sounds like, Joshua, you and I have things in common, metaphysical interests, which I'm happy about. Okay, this is the first poem I'm going to read is My Poetry. And it sort of gainsays everything that Christy said about me and about my poetry, but it's okay. I traded books with Mary, but Mary got mad and took hers back. All writers worth their salt are part wasabi. Yes, some of it seems small, even to me, anti-Rotarian at heart. And I admit, words aren't much of anything to those who believe nothing invisible is real. I believe in my book, I think, or at least in other people's books, or at least in the hard mercy and wasabi sting the gifted may make of words. Yeah, sure, I believe. But then I see it lying there on the table, my book, a wood product emptied of its treeness, and I think, Mary, Mary, what have we done with our lives? So, you know, a poem is a snapshot of the way you're feeling at the moment. It's not forever, although some people take it that way. This poem has lots of Latin in it, and I'm going to murder the Latin because I never took Latin, and I should have at some point. I wish I had. But it's about Arvo Pärt, the composer, who is one of my favorites, and he uses Latin all the time in his title, so I can't help it. This is called Lamentate, which is the name of the piece. Listening to Da Pacem Domine by Arvo Pärt, I am lifted out of the hospital room where Sarah is getting her once-a-month infusion of Leqembi, into a realm of what must be the sublime, though I've never heard a satisfying definition of that word, but have felt, tasted, heard, seen it many times, more than my share, I think. And now the Saladin, Stato d'animo, in which the piano and flute meander through a forest, pointing out sunlight falling through leaves to the canopy floor, in a pattern changing in the wind. Day to day I am sometimes almost happy, then switch back to my default morosity, a word, because the process has been announced, its outline made clear, I will lose her piece by piece. Ah, well, I try to think we have to go via one horror or another. But then I feel my own body's magnetic attraction to the earth, how much the elements want us back, and I am sore afraid. There are many out-of-body experiences, yes, but you have to be fully awake, a rarity. And now Pärt is into the Spietato section of the Lamentate, which has a lot of car crash cymbals, dissonant block chords, and unexpected about-faces of melody and rhythm, the opposite of sublime, I think, though some may disagree, postmodern friends, for example, who applaud any art that crashes and burns through Gothic buildings or unsettles the sleep of dead white males. Art as consolation's an especially beloved target. This then leads into the Fragile section, filled with Pärt's tender evocations. Those friends would savage it. A musical language with distant percussive periods, commas, semicolons, repetitions with slight variation, sad-eyed horns moping along behind hesitant chords, here and there resolutions of the kind one might find going through an average day, the clerk thanking you for the tip with a smile small enough to be genuine. The Leqembi infusions are supposed to slow the plaque, clogging regions of Sarah's mind, one province of memory at a time. It seems to be working, though she and I both watch the erasures slowly widen nonetheless. Then the theme implied, stepped carefully around by isolate piano notes that hang in the air like holographic memories of old Europe, a prospect otherwise blank, empty. And now Pärt has finished the Risolutamente and launched into the Fragile, Il Consoltere, where notes standing in for tears are recognizable. The right-hand piano part is played by a ghost, saying things we've heard 1,000 times, ordered now in the way of music to mirror our grief, but kind, worn down by time, bearable. This is an imagining of one of my favorite poets, Adam Zagajewski, who just died relatively recently. But he had a fascination with metaphysical topics also. And it's called Zagajewski on the Vistula Boulevard. And I'm going to murder the place that I also have here, unfortunately, because I don't speak Polish. Adam sips espresso, sitting at the Lozdarno Chiana passion-owned cafe, while the occasional spoonful of gingerbread ice cream travels to his mouth. Inside his head, once again, the philosophers are arguing, Kant and Foucault in particular, coming close to blows. Adam lets them have their way. His attention rests just above the river in the zone where cormorants and black-headed gulls patrol the air, all their thoughts in the form of fish, zander, barbel, and trout. In Adam's mind, a poem is forming, something about visiting the house where he grew up, now alien and familiar at once. But he's been sifting poetry through the self a long time. He's in no hurry to write it down. It's 73 degrees, no humidity, a sky sheer blue, a breeze that sometimes lifts a strand of hair, the blonde hair of the woman sitting next to him, which she tucks back behind her ear. Many things important as poetry take place every second. The river's surface, a billion shifting chips of sunlight, the ice cream cold and sweet on his tongue. I do believe that. Yeah, I do. And here's a memory poem. It's called Long Island. The planned curves of Levittown streets lead me circuitously, a word I learned much later, streets that were designed out of kindness or necessity by Levitt to meander so that my daily walk to school was snake-like, extending my tendency to pause and poke at some dead cat or dog shit turned white by age. I was often late and never got why the teacher cared. And the junkyard that bordered the more down-market part of town, so beloved by my lost boy gang, where the rarely seen widowed woman lived with her son, Frankie Miller, who showed me all he had left of his dad, a box of army medals and campaign patches, arousing my envy sharpest when he pulled out the coolest one, an embroidered shark in colored threads, no lettering. I wanted it badly. In spite of the fact that I had a father, he had survived the war and was a good provider, a good man, which was not unusual for the time and was, in fact, common. And I learned to swim in breaststroke underwater, holding my breath the pool's 25-yard width, the pool Levitt also designed as part of a planned community, the first in America. And George Rutolo socked my arm so hard on the bus ride to school I thought I'd pee, but luckily did not. And the wheelwright woman got cancer no one talked about until she died. And I had my first nocturnal emission, my first drink, my first guitar lesson from a fat-fingered bass player down the street who'd turned one bedroom of his house into a studio. And my sister got sick and spent months on the edge at Mount Sinai in Manhattan, and the invisible years overall fell quietly, quickly to that island, one of the many places I have lived on this earth. Another true story. It's called A Story About a Story. When I was 20 and doing the play West Side Story, at the end of the fight scene between the Jets and the Sharks, one of the Sharks put me on his shoulders and whirled me around, which he was supposed to do, when an elbow thudded against my head and I was knocked out, which was not supposed to happen. I was only out for a moment, but I remember being in a garden where the air made me giddy, and fruit of every kind hung from the trees like soft, glowing lights, and I could pick whatever I wanted without the usual fear of endings. When I woke, the stage was dark, the curtain closed. It was the end of the act. So, I was pretending to be someone I was not, along with a lot of other people who were also pretending, and an audience watching the pretense and believing, almost, when two or more realities collided in my head, and the real leaked into dream, and vice versa. During the run of the play, as usual, members of the cast got close. We loved each other. We had sex with each other. We thought of ourselves as family. When the play was over, we forgot all about each other. Ever since I was knocked out and lay unconscious on that stage, I have thought about states of waking and non-waking, how one can sometimes cross over and penetrate the other in a way that startles and loosens your grip, as if you were at a farmer's market sorting through a bin of tomatoes and you came upon a baseball, and the seller's stand became a batter's box, and you realized that you were the pitcher, and the count was 3-2, bases loaded, and your next pitch had to be a strike, or the big game would be lost, when all you wanted was a tomato, sweet, juicy, red, the sun inside. I don't know why I was so adamant about that last line. Felt good.
Seems right.
Seems right, yeah. It's really strange to be here in a new capacity as a professor emeritus. But it's good to see my colleagues here. Again, the Latin title, Ex Nihil nihil fit. Nihilio. Jesus Christ, I don't know. I don't know. It means nothing comes out of nothing. Listen, I know I'm speaking to you, but I'm not sure who you are. Could you move a little closer? Is that an observation deck inside your head? Does it revolve like mine? All down history, I've been aiming at this moment. I liked the Middle Ages, even though I had the cheap blood of a peasant. At least the dirt we ate then was organic, and murder a cure of sorts. Now you're wondering, how long is this going to take, these words, this life? And are they in any sense commensurate? Fair enough. If nothing comes from nothing, how is it I recently hugged a woman I knew 40 years ago, and there was rain in her hair, and in the fleece in her collar, and she had the same eyes as 40 years ago, looking at me out of a different body. March of the Toy Soldiers. We soldiers are tiny, but the war is real. The battle moves ahead, plowing the sown fields. All night the horizon sparks and flashes. The death dimension is speechless. If you find words, send them. I have this longing for what I don't know. We play video games, we await orders. Everyone but God has forgotten our name. Conversation by the tomb. He said, death is entrance. He said, don't be afraid. He said, be perfect. Love those who hurt you. I said, that's impossible. I said, that's what's not to fear. I said, look how it is. Look what's coming. He said, a man had a son. He said, the son drank. He said, son returned. Father opened his arms. I said, that's not scientific. He said, I gave you science. I said, I'm so tired. Come, he said, I will give you rest. I guess that's my gospel poem. Fairy tale with bottle and sea. Home is a house by the sea, a clapboard with sides worn white by salt in the storm coming in off the Atlantic. There in a nest under eaves, fledglings looked out over the edge, the porch fence all around, slats against a fall. Which didn't stop tears of envy and distress, for Mom and Dad were shared in the salt and storm coming off the Atlantic. The fledglings cried tears the color of the ocean in a jar, but all was usual in that and many things. Everything happened in that nest, sandy-floored, polished by love and anxiety, a bright metal bobbing in calm seas. Dad came and went, never far from the bottle of salt and storm he drained, nightly, then daily, without halt or capacity to halt. That was for later, much later. Now the bottled storm allowed him to send off for the future, which arrived in a package too big to fit through the door. It remained on the porch, another life inside. He ran a knife down the side of the box and removed exactly those pieces he'd been wanting, knowing it was good, and also that the price would come due and he would pay. Then Mom and Dad grew together into one flesh in the home that was a house by the sea, and the fledglings were baptized in the church that faced the Atlantic and the graves that looked out on the sea. And the children stepped off and flew. They were happy, those four, in the salt and storm of their beginning, in the home of the house by the sea. For my daughters, one can't do what the other one does. It takes a long time to belong, I remember. Of course, I would like to see you in the life to come. You can't bring anyone with you. Thank you for not flooding me with the unbearable. Every belief's a leap of faith. You close your eyes, you step off. 2 more poems. Walking Prayer. Thank you for this tree line of red maple against blue, each leaf flipping over and back, sun blink. Thank you for the dark and leaf banks the sun can't reach. Thank you for this breeze that sweeps the pond so it shivers like a satisfied animal. Thank you for this animal walking behind me. I would be as devoted to you as she is to me, but I am not. And I am sorry for the countless times I have turned away, though you have counted and know their number. How my harm ripples out, travels through my beloveds and beyond, across this and other landscapes, until the moon itself may be pocked by my pride and disdain. Forgive my claim that any action of mine may touch the moon. I have confessed, but I forget, choosing instead to remember wrongs done me, large and small, which you know also. Thank you for the path that circles the field and skirts the river as it moves from grass and light to shaded earth, pebbles cobbled into its surface by 1,000 feet. Thank you for the river, tugs pushing their trays of coal upstream against the current. Thank you for this day, like no other. Continuous flow from the center of being. What are you that you give without ceasing? You open yourself as we fade. What is man that you pay him such mind? And the last poem is called Wait. I'm sitting on a concrete slab waiting for Dad to pick me up after a game. Long Island, humid summer, elbows propped on knees. I feel slow drops roll down each side of my chest, starting out hot. The drops pick up speed and cool as they fall, so that by the time they reach my belt, they're cold. Also, I'm staring at the bakery sign across the street, happy not to be there among the bread, pastries, and adults. Where I am, there's asphalt, a parking lot. I've been sitting here forever, it seems, or at least for the time between myself then and myself today. Now there's 2 of us, waiting for Dad to drive us home. Thank you for listening.
We have some time for a Q&A, so if you have any questions or comments, then you can direct them to our readers. Would anyone like to have at it?
I have a question for Jeff.
Sure.
You mentioned at the outset that poems were snapshots, and I feel that way too sometimes. As I was listening to your poems, there's so much recollection and ordering of events, and I wonder, do you feel like that there's something unstable about the snapshot, that there's a flux or a ripple or something that persists in the poem, or once the poem is written, do you feel like that's kind of fixed, not going back to it now, it's done?
I think both things can be true. I don't like to go back to poems once they're finished. I want to go on to the next poem. But I think that life itself is unstable. It's a matter of flux. So, for example, right now our pipes are frozen and we're living in a goddamn B&B, Airbnb, and unstable is the name of that game. Yes, sir.
This is just a statement, it's not a question, but in October there were 2 nights of performances of Arvo Part's music at Carnegie Hall, and I was really lucky enough to go. And while it was happening, I was thinking to myself, like, when I die, there's this music I could be listening to. And my wife was next to me, and she was like, "I could die right now." It just came to mind when you were here.
Gotcha. I gotcha. That makes sense.
But not in a bad way, not in a funny way, right?
I can't talk for her.
Or just a comment as well, but you know, the idea that is the poem fluxing, or you know, are you living your life? And had a pleasure of hearing Joshua's poetry read aloud now, probably 4 times.
You're a veteran, man.
Hey man,
Yeah.
for bangers.
Thank you
But
for
they're
your
different
service.
now. You know, you're here at the end of your world tour, and you know, I've heard some of those before, but well, you read them so differently now. Honed some, you know, oral chops, but like at the same time, probably a different relationship to them in each iteration of reading aloud. And Jeff, you were like, why did I read that line that way? I'm like, well, I don't know, but to the point, right? It was in flux, not just books.
I might do it differently next time, yeah.
Right, not just books. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want to comment on that, how your relationship to the poems has changed as you've been reading from it for 2 years in front of people?
Absolutely not.
No? I thought there might be a question there, Mark, but
Yeah.
I think that I would just say I'm interested to know more about your impressions of the differences. than
Yeah,
mine.
you know, you did have this little shtick thing, in a good way, where about 3 or 4 poems in, you would say it's okay to laugh. But, you know, we got that, you know, which is itself quite a funny moment, I think, and well timed.
Hilarious,
Yeah.
apparently.
And then you're like, no one's laughing, but actually, you know, honestly, like, I was hearing a lot of suppressed laughter here too, and I think you read with a kind of confidence of their being pretty damn funny, and I think that's very winning, in a way that, you know, there was maybe a nervousness about whether people would get the joke, but man, I think they're getting it, and you're feeling it as well. That was just my feeling of your feeling, so who knows if I'm being empathetic or just total projection, but probably the latter.
It's a strange thing. The decorum of the poetry reading is a strange thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that after all this time of having readings, and for 40 years since the beginning of readings, or more than that actually, people still don't know how to behave at a poetry reading. And I'm with them. I don't know either. You know, sometimes I feel like Marianne Moore's line is to the point. I too dislike it. That's about poetry itself. I too dislike it. I have an uncertain relationship with language. And it changes all the time. It's in flux. But yeah, I don't know if there's a proper decorum for behaving in a poem. I mean, I've read at a prison, and the guys, you know, they shouted things out, and that was cool too. You know, I read a poem about a guy tipping out on his wife, you know, and boy, they loved that. They're whooping and hollering. And then I've read at lots of universities, and it's like this, which is fine too.
All right, so that made me think about, what about poetry that's, I mean, is it just context? Because there's obviously poetry that's written for a stage, for an open mic or a slam or whatever, and
Yeah.
people act more like they do around music.
Mhm.
So is it just, how do you all feel about that? Is it academic pretentiousness?
I mean, I'm sure that's part of it, you know, but.
But even in a bookstore, it wouldn't be hooping and hollering.
Right, I think literary culture, the decorum of literary culture, I guess I would say, is the broader category to which the observation would pertain.
Right.
But I do think even there, though, there's a lot of variation. James Tate once was so funny in a reading, I was just weeping uncontrollably, but laughing at the same time. And people around you were like that too. And so that's, you know, clearly not the decorum we would expect from poetry reading. But maybe every poet kind of has their own relationship with with performance, I guess.
I think so, yeah. I don't really understand the idea of performative art, or the way it's used in the academy today, performative, performance, that kind of thing. But I envy people who, do poetry slams. Wish my poetry lent itself to that. It doesn't, or I don't feel it does, anyway.
That part about the tomato did.
Tomato was, yeah, I could have repeated that
Slamming.
line.
Yeah.
Like that poem.
Karen, now you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I had you both were saying things about being metaphysical, and there were a couple of moments in, first of all, I really enjoyed both of your readings, and I was intrigued, Josh, by your talking about what turned out to be your upbringing. And then I think, if I understand it correctly, your upbringing showing up in a Brooks Brothers suit. Yeah.
In a what?
In a Brooks Brothers suit. And then that was followed by or concluded with something about reasonable people getting along. And I just started to think about your childhood in the East, and I don't know about your child, but things that you had mentioned in that poem, and how one's upbringing might be represented in such a way. And then, so there was this sort of figure, and then lo and behold, Jeff's father pulled the future up onto the front porch. And what, did he slice off the side or something?
I ran a knife down the side, yeah.
Yeah. And I was really struck by this.
Well, Auden said that if you've made it to the age of 5, you have enough material to last the rest of your life. I think he's right,
I guess.
You have to live longer than that to actually do it, though.
I don't know how to frame the question really, but if you could, either one of you could say more about what was meant by those images, entities.
What's the question again?
It's very
Unpack the box, Jeff.
Tell me what
She
you
wants
said.
to know more about that image and your poem about your dad in the box.
Oh,
Yeah, well, there's sort of parallel between the two.
Yeah, they're kind of similar moments in a way.
well, I think that, for me, life has a kind of hard edge. And it's okay that it does, because I'm not complaining about it. But it would be silly to deny it. And so I look for consolation. And I think that consolation and the hard edge both have to be in my poetry, or else it's lying in a way. I don't know if that answers it, but.
No, I just.
And also, it's to go back to that time, I've been doing a lot of recollecting. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, and that's what you do when you get older, I guess. I don't know. I've never been here.
I think that the poem that you're mentioning, I was attempting to do something to the autobiographical in the poem, and I thought, well, what if I funneled the retrospective autobiographical poem through a conceit, which is a technique that is prominent in an earlier period than Romanticism, which we credit with the invention of autobiography, certainly in poetry, and to use the conceit to force me to produce things that I might not produce without it.
Thank you.
I had a
Michael?
question for Joshua. This question is somewhat complex, for which the answer may eventually just be no. And it's tinted by the first line from your first poem, which was hilarious, by the way.
I saw you. I saw you. You lit up.
But,
The one about the abyss.
yeah, it's riff on Nietzsche. So, I tried to listen, and I haven't read anything by you, so this is just a first impression. But I got the impression when I was listening to it that, not that your reading were nihilistic per se, but that Nietzsche said, and I'm pretty sure Camus argued that they were trying to overcome the absurdity or nihilism of life through, what I have called at one point to a group of students, a smiley face nihilism, that a certain, no worries, man. So, is that in any sense, do you find that reflective of what you're doing? I did say the answer could just be no.
I don't think of myself as a no worries man kind of guy, but I would never, put myself in a conversation with the people that you've mentioned, because those are the gods, as far as they belong in the Empyrean. But I would say that where is value to be found now? And I don't think that's an easy question to answer, and that is Nietzsche's question for sure. Where will it come from? And that question informs my work as a poet, and also my work as a scholar and critic of poetry too. So I think there is something there. And if that's a version of smiley-faced nihilism, maybe.
I didn't take time to write that question down carefully. So,
right. Well, but I think the humor is, I think of it as a means of registering discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I guess, that would be a way of thinking. But I had a former student, tell me that straight up, that I wrote nihilistic work, and I was taken aback by that a little bit. So you're not the only one.
Oh, well, I'm not a creative writer. This was in a philosophical context, which I think can be full of jokes too. So I do that. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I did see, Brody, you had your hand up?
I just wondered, talking about upbringings and stuff like that, I wondered, is the writing of the poetry part of your, healing process, part of the, self-therapizing, or do you, work through your stuff and then write the poems?
That's an interesting question. I never work through anything and then write a poem. I like to, I sit there and I let whatever's going to come into my mind, and that's where I start. And God only knows what's going to come into my mind. It could be the first part of a sestina, it could be free verse, it could be any kind of thing. But as I say, lately I have more recollection poems, and I don't think I've worked through any of it. I think I'm a mess.
Aren't we all?
I think the notion that you can work through things through writing poems or writing in general. We've had, a couple of decades where that's, I think, entered into a sort of common sense position. And I think it's true. The question is, can you write something good and do that? And I think you can. But I don't think I've ever thought consciously to myself, I'm gonna work through this piece of trauma or this particular problem. I think that I discover the problem in writing the poem. So it's sort of writing towards what will be worked out rather than knowing what needs to be worked out for and then proceeding.
Yeah, what he said.
All right, we are kind of at the end of our time, so if we could give our readers one more hand.